So while we wait for folks to come in, I just want to welcome you to our Ritual and Remembrance series this year. And specifically, we're here for You Lost Someone, Not Something, explaining the grief of pet loss. And while we are waiting, we do invite you to, in the chat, put the name of a beloved pet companion that you would like to remember during our time together. I know I recently lost our dog of 10 years. His name was Rocky. So I'll probably put that in a little bit later because I'm doing a few things, but please feel free to share. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Julie Evans, our executive director.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. If you're just joining, we're putting in the chat name of beloved pets that we've lost. So feel free to join us in that. And again, if you're comfortable having the camera on so we get to see you, that's always fun as presenters to be talking to people and not boxes. But if you're in your jammies, feel free to stay, or feel free. We'll see you in your jammies. We're happy for that too. For those of you who don't know Roots and Roads Community Hospice Foundation, we've been around. This is our 25th year, actually, in August. We'll be 25 years old. And we do a few different things. One, which is very behind the scenes, is financial support to hospice patients of limited means for basic necessities that aren't covered by health insurance, of which there are many. So that's a big, probably the biggest, amount of our programming dollars go to that. But another aspect of what we do is end-of-life education, which is what we're doing together tonight. And then we also have sort of an extension of that education online. We have a resource called the Crosswalk, which helps not just patients and families, but also healthcare workers navigate from time of diagnosis all the way through end of life to everything in between. And of course, grief support for those who are left, who are loving folks after they're gone. So those are the things that we do. We're happy to be here with you tonight because we recognize that we were just talking earlier before everybody started joining about the prevalence. I know I had the dog that I named in the chat, Rob. He came from a hospice patient who died, and Dr. Hogan shared that she has quite a few dogs just in her veterinary practice that she comes across. And so we believe at Roots and Roads that grief is all encompassing, right? It's not just about losing our human loved ones, but it can be about the loss of our other significant beings in our lives, as well as other losses and transitions. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I'd like to give a special shout out to folks who have donated in support of these sessions. You really do make such a big difference. It allows us to keep these presentations free and open to anyone. And we get people, I was saying earlier, we had a woman from Sweden email, it's the middle of the night there, so she's not on with us, but asking about a recording of this. And we do record it, and it will be up in about a week. So you see the beautiful people there on the screen who gifted us this presentation. So thank you all. And I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Community Engagement, David Fife.
Thanks so much, Julie. Good evening, everybody. What's the next slide, Jennifer? There we go. I want to also thank our sponsors, the series sponsors this year. We had Desert Diamond Casino, who sponsored last month's session, but we're also grateful for Sunset Hospice and Intermountain Centers and the Legacy Foundation of Southeast Arizona. All of these are amazing partners who have joined with us to bring this series of ritual remembrance to the large community, everything from Southern Arizona to Europe, it sounds like, and maybe several other continents as well. So thank you so much to the sponsors for making this series possible. And now we will turn our attention to Dr. Sarah Hogan. We're grateful to have her with us tonight to talk about the experience of grief resulting from the death of a pet. We asked Dr. Hogan to lead this conversation because her knowledge and important perspectives come not from research, but from years of work in emergency veterinary care. She sits with people during their most tragic and difficult times with their pets and provides compassionate care and wisdom that she has learned from her clients and the love that they share. Dr. Hogan, thank you for being with us tonight. Sarah, we will turn things over to you now.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it so much. And thank you, everyone, for making the time to be here today. As we begin, I want you to understand two things. This talk is a safe place to fall. You don't have to explain your feelings. They are understood, and the pain that you feel from the loss of your pets is shared. So if you want to ask me anything, if you want to tell us anything, please put it in the chat and know that this is absolutely a safe audience. The other thing that I would really like you to understand after we're done tonight is that when you lose a pet, you lose a someone you love. Someone furry, someone feathered, maybe someone scaly. But they were all a someone in your life and they mattered. So my goal is to help you to find a way to accept that loss, to move through the grief, find a way to move through the grief, and to help you find meaning in the life that you have now. I want to start by explaining why pet loss grief is different than losing a human, why it's a lot of times more difficult than losing a human, but why that grief is so incredibly valid. First of all, you need to know that pet loss grief is a form of what is called disenfranchised grief. What disenfranchised grief is a form of grief that isn't really understood or even really recognized by our society. And so what that means is when you are experiencing that grief, you are really not getting the kind of support that you need. Compare that to if you lost a parent or a grandparent. If a friend came up to you that hadn't seen you in a while and said, it's so good to see you. How are you? And if you said, my mom just died, their demeanor would go from enthusiasm, bubbly, to, oh my God, I am so sorry. I didn't know. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Their voice changes, their posture changes. They might just reach out and hug you. The energy in the shared space that you have with that person completely changes. And the other thing that they might do and are likely to do if they care about you is to check on you again. Check on you in some days or some weeks, and just to see how you're doing. That's very different when you lose a pet. Unfortunately, because the grief is disenfranchised, people don't know what to say. And if they come up to you bubbly and say, "Wow," and you say, "I just lost my cat. I've had her for 20 years. I've had my cat longer than my husband." They might kind of freeze and then say, "Well, at least it was a cat." And they're well meaning, but they're uncomfortable. And so when there's an awkward silence and it's uncomfortable, that's when people tend to say dumb things to fill the void. It doesn't make it easier to receive. It's very hard. They're well meaning, but they just don't understand. And they don't understand at a level that you can't really explain it. And that's what makes it so hard. If you have a pet person, you don't have to explain it. If you have somebody who doesn't get it, you can't explain it because it isn't something necessarily here, it's something here. Another thing that is different when you lose a human is you have the opportunity to write an obituary and then have a funeral or a wake. What these two items do for you. One is when you're writing an obituary or a eulogy, you are able to tell everyone how extraordinarily well this life was lived. You're able to celebrate that life, celebrate that person, tell everyone their accomplishments, how amazing they were, and tell them about the legacy of love that they are leaving behind. And that obituary gets published, or you have that funeral, and the community is drawn to you. So you immediately have even more support. People will reach out and say, "God, I knew your dad. I worked with him for, years ago, and I still think about him. He was a great guy." So you get even more support. And it validates your feelings that, yeah, he was a great guy. And I was so lucky to have him in my life. The third thing that those events allow you to do is they're tangible and they act almost like a roadmap marker. So you can say, okay, I lost him, but I got the obituary done and I got the funeral done. And so it allows you to mark the passage of time and processing of the grief in a meaningful and thoughtful way. Comparing that to pet loss, we don't have a great way to write obituaries. There isn't a recognized outlet for that. We don't have a great way to announce that we're going to have a funeral for a pet that maybe, many people loved. Like when I've rescued pets that had been abandoned at the hospital, the whole hospital loved them. They just couldn't take them. So there's 25 people there that have loved and cared for this pet. It just happens to live at my house now. So it's not that there isn't an audience that would share that with you. It's just hard to get them together. You don't get to have a mortuary. You don't get to have a place where you can necessarily have a celebration of life. So you don't have a way to process the grief in a tangible and meaningful way. And you absolutely knew the value of that life and what it brought to yours. And you celebrated it every single day that you shared them with you. But now that they're gone, it's a very small population of people that can celebrate that life and recognize that value with you. And that makes pet loss grief really isolating. And that makes it really hard. Another thing that's different when we lose pets versus humans is as adults, we don't necessarily live with our parents or our children anymore. A lot of our kids are grown and our parents are more independent and living wherever they are living. And so your pet takes on a role that becomes your constant 24/7 companion. And they become a companion in kind of an intimate way. Brushing my teeth, I fully recognize that there will be at least one cat playing in the sink as I am trying to brush my teeth on a daily basis. That's my life. I have 13 dogs currently. Trying to go to the bathroom by myself is a major feat. I have to get up, bolt for the bathroom, and try to sneak in and get the door closed before, and they're all little dogs. So, 3 dachshunds, a chihuahua. I have 2 little terrier cocktail puppies, I call them. They're about 3 pounds each. They can easily sneak in as I'm closing the door, the crack this big. So it's just a different, they're literally a 24/7 companion. The good thing, the better thing than sneaking into the bathroom with you is if I've had a great day, I can come home and I'm all kinds of bubbly and excited, and my husband's happy to see me. And then all the dogs pick up on the vibrant energy. And it's a complete free for all. We're laughing and talking and throwing cookies to each other, and and everybody has a ton of fun. Or if I've come home and I've had a really hard day. And in emergency, you have really hard days because you don't get well puppy visits. Good news doesn't come see you. You see tragedies. You see people on their worst day. You see the things that wake people up as nightmares in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. And they reach over and pat the dog and go, "Oh, thank God, that was a dream." They aren't dreams when they come see me. They're a living nightmare. So some days I come home and I'm a bit of a wreck. And I just need to sit on the couch. And I need to have 13 little heartbeats recognize that I just need some time. And they all pack around me on the couch. And Bob sits next to me and we get a great big blanket. And we watch some TV that I classify as mental Novocaine. Because I don't need to feel anything and I don't need to think about anything. I just need to unwind. So I will watch a cooking show, or I will watch some house renovation, or I will watch something that really has nothing to do with me or anything about animals, but I can just unwind and appreciate that, yes, that is a beautiful cake. And I don't care that it was a competition and that cake lost. It's not going to negatively impact my life. So that's where our pets are so critical to our day-to-day functioning. Other areas where they are so intrinsic to our lives is as a source of identity. I can tell you when I walk my dogs in the neighborhood, there are other families that walk their dogs. I don't know the people's names, but I can tell you that Buster's parents are very, very nice. And Bronco's family is nice, but they need to put their kid on a leash as opposed to the dog on a leash, because Bronco's better behaved than the toddler that squeals and runs at my dogs. And I'm always worried that A, she's going to trip, or B, she's going to try to pick up one by the throat. That's part of my social circle. I don't know that I'd recognize the families even if I saw them at Albertsons. That's our grocery store. But I'd recognize the dogs. I met my husband when I saved his dog's life. And it was one of those critical cases that I didn't know if he was going to live or die. So I gave Bob my cell phone number at the time. And to this minute, he is still in my phone as Winchester's dad. And I didn't change it on purpose because that's the foundation of our relationship. And Winchester survived. And now we're married 5 years later, but there was a gap between there. But yeah, so they're a social identification for you. They're huge for emotional support. They meet us where we are. They never have judgment. It doesn't matter if I had a terrible day. It doesn't matter if I made a mistake. And now I'm reliving that saying, God, did that mistake have negative consequences or was it just a mistake? They can listen to me. They can look at me without judgment. And with their eyes, they tell me, you're perfect. Doesn't matter what happened. You're perfect. And that's what helps you get through really hard days. They are a sense of security. I don't feel safe unless I have a dog around. There are times I think I hear something and it's like, what was that? And then I look at the dogs. And if the dogs are all calm, the doorbell just rang. Sammy, come here. Sorry, So wasn't timed on purpose. That's just the way. Sammy, it's okay. Sam, no, Sammy. Sorry, they'll be quiet in a minute. So yes, a great security system. Sneak attacks clearly won't work at my house. They give us purpose in our life. They help us see our value. They give us a reason to get out of bed. Momo, shh, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. I can't hold both of you. Come here.
And Sarah, just so you know, the way Zoom works, it doesn't pick up their barks very much. We can hear you really
good.
clearly.
I was going to say, it sounds...
It's good. It's good.
It sounds very dramatic in here. So I'm glad. The other thing that they do that is such a noticeable absence when we lose them is the source of physical warmth that they bring. We are 98.6 degrees. They are naturally 101 up to 102.5. Cats are naturally 100 degrees to 102.5. So that incredible warmth that they radiate when we're cuddling with them is real because their body temperature is higher than ours is. A king-size bed is incredibly cold when you're alone. You pack a couple of pets under the covers, and it's a very nice place to sleep, and you feel very secure and very safe. They play such a huge part of our life. Their impact is social, emotional, and physical. That's why when they're gone, it is such a big piece of ourselves. Unfortunately, pets are frequently mistaken or mislabeled, I should say, as things. And what I mean by things is in the eyes of the law, pets are a thing, just like a car or a tool. If somebody steals your pet and you can prove that they stole them, if you can't get the pet back, you are entitled to the compensated value of them. So if it was a cat that's a domestic short hair cat that you got from the shelter, that would be potentially $25. That's what happens with a thing. Pets are not things. That's completely wrong. Because things are what you just replace if you use them up. A roll of paper towels is a thing. Place a paper towel and use up the last one. And you don't care. You get on Amazon, you get more paper towels. You go to the grocery store, you get more paper towels. If you use the last paper towel, you don't weep. You don't hurt so bad that it feels like your soul is bleeding, because what else could hurt? What else could cause that much pain? They aren't things. They are someone's. They are furry someone's. They are feathered someone's. They are scaly someone's. But they are someone's. If you ever meet a person who insists that they are a thing, tell them, fine. They are the load-bearing wall in my physical and emotional structure of life. That's what they are. To recap, I just want you to know pet loss grief is different and more difficult because the grief is disenfranchised. It's not understood. It's not supported. And there is no path, no markers to follow to know your progress. Our pets are an intimate and daily part of our lives that directly impacts social, emotional, and physical functioning. And the value, the absolute value that they bring to our life isn't legally recognized. So when we do lose a pet, how do we navigate this grief when we don't have a roadmap? When we don't have societal norms or markers to be able to follow? Honestly, it's an incredibly difficult path to walk. And the hardest reality of grief is it's something you have to go through. You cannot step over it. You cannot go around it. You cannot bury it and have it just disappear. If you bury grief, it doesn't break down. It unfortunately grows stronger over time. And then what it will start to do is escape because you can't control it any longer. And it will escape in small amounts and sometimes in giant eruptions. And then it's much harder to contain. So what you really have to do is just do your best to go through it. And the path is difficult and sometimes even scary, especially if it's traveled alone. So my hope today is we can start taking some steps on this path together. And I'm going to do my best to shine a light in the places that appear darkest and maybe give you some tools to use along the way. First thing you need to accept is this path is 100% individual. It doesn't matter if your mom said, oh, you'll be fine in a few days. I was. No, it's 100% individual. Nobody gets to tell you how to do it. And there isn't a right way or a wrong way. This isn't that black and white because emotions aren't all good or bad. Emotions are just feelings, and feelings don't get classified necessarily. So recognize that it's 100% individual. You may be familiar with the Kubler-Ross classification of grief, saying that there are 5 stages. Those stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Unfortunately, it sounds a lot like lines at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Like you could just get in the denial line, and then when that's done, you go get in the anger line, and then when that's done. It's not that linear. If you were to draw the path of grief on a piece of paper, it would look like an incredibly irregular zigzag with some circles back and maybe some circles that are ground in. And then there'd be some areas where maybe the pen left the page because you'd had a good day and you felt almost normal. And then the pen would return to the page and you'd see puddles where the ink seemed to seep into the paper because the pen sat there for God knows how long. Those puddles are basically what happens when you get triggered. And triggers are things that basically cause an unexpected rush of grief to hit you. First of all, triggers are normal. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you did a really good job loving your pet. And triggers are different for everybody. It could be a dog food commercial. It could be opening a cupboard and finding that empty bowl that doesn't have to live on the corner in the floor anymore. It could be being at the grocery store and absently mindedly grabbing the cat treats and throwing them in the basket and walking 5 steps before you realize, I don't need cat treats anymore. Every one of those things can be a trigger. And they can put you into a phase of grief where you're angry all over again. Or maybe you're depressed all over again. Or maybe you're entering acceptance. What does acceptance of grief look like? Acceptance is what happens when you still miss them. But you can think about the time that, say, you were on a Zoom call and the doorbell rang and Sammy lost his mind and I had to pick him up and hold him on the Zoom call. That's acceptance. When the happy memories start to weigh more than the pain. The other things that can make grief a lot harder are what I call comorbidities to grief. Comorbidity is a medical term that means something that makes a bad situation even worse. I think there are probably, honestly, thousands of comorbidities because your relationship with your pet is completely individual. But there are 5 comorbidities that I have seen most commonly in my career. First one is if you lose a pet to a preventable accident. You accidentally left the door open and they snuck out and they got hit by a car. If you had to make a euthanasia decision and it was a pet that you had rescued. If you had a pet that actually rescued you, meaning in the darkest point in your life, when you really needed support, you reached out for a hand and what you found was a paw or a wing. Or maybe it was a tank of beautiful fish that would swim and allow you to just sit there and watch them and feel like all the chaos in your life was going slower because you could watch these incredible, beautiful lives swim around and be happy. And maybe just hypnotize you enough that you felt normal for a while. And that's okay. Maybe the pet that you lost was a living link to someone that you loved. When you lost your mom, you kept her dog. When you were doing hospice care, you promised that person, I will love him like he's mine, because he'll be mine. And now when you're losing him, it's like losing that friend you had made and taken care of all over again. Or maybe that pet was more than a pet. Maybe that pet was essentially a surrogate child or a soulmate, or the reason that you got out of bed when you were thinking that life would be easier if you could just stop breathing. If you just disappeared, nobody would care. But you stayed alive and you fought yourself back to mental health because you had someone that mattered to you and you mattered to them so much that you were willing to fight to live. Those are the losses that are the hardest. And it's incredibly hard to grieve that loss and be able to tell people how meaningful that relationship was. That's where you need to find a safe audience, like the people here on this call. You don't have to explain it to us. We feel everything you feel and we understand. When you are going through grief, I don't have a magic wand and I don't have any incredible advice to tell you other than if you are going through grief, please don't stop. Winston Churchill said it best when he was watching the Germans trying to bomb London off the map. And he was grieving the loss of the city that he loved so much. And he told the people to inspire them, when you are going through hell, keep going. Don't look at the river of fire. Don't look backwards and mourn what can't be changed. Keep going forward. That is the best and the only advice I really have that can help. So we know why it's so difficult. We know why it's different. So how can we process it? And how can we celebrate this life that was lived with love and devotion? The first thing that I think helps incredibly is to talk out loud. Literally talk to your pet. Saying it out loud makes all the difference. There is a reason that they read the names of those that we lost when the Twin Towers were bombed. We read those names out loud because reading it out loud gives it strength and power and validity. And it tells the world, the universe, these lives mattered. When you think about things that you don't say out loud, what are the things that you won't utter? Statements that are hurtful, maybe things that are scary, or maybe even things that are shameful. The love that you had for your pet is none of those things. And love is an incredibly powerful declaration. Saying I love you to someone means something. So talk to your pet out loud. You can tell them everything you wish that you had told them before. Like, you know how much you meant to me? You know how incredible it was to come home from work and see you jumping at the windowsill, excited to see me? That made my heart sing every time you did that. Do you know how much I miss you when I'm brushing my teeth? Even though you'd flick water all over the mirror, I didn't mind cleaning the mirror every day because that was you and me. That was our time. That was our fun game. Maybe you need to tell them that you did your best. And what I mean by that is you can tell them, I am so sorry that I had to make that decision to let you go. But I want you to know, if it had been a broken leg or a bladder infection or anything fixable, I would have found a way to save you. And you were so badly broken, the doctor told me we couldn't fix you. It's not that I wouldn't. I would have done anything I could. It was that I couldn't. As you can tell, those are hard. The hardest thing I had to learn as a veterinarian is I cannot will my patients better. Promise you I've tried. It is a rock I have broken myself against on more than one occasion. And the scars where I broke myself, as you can see, are still sensitive. So yeah, tell them. And the reason you need to tell them is because this part of you understands. You were too badly broken being hit by a car. You were in heart failure. You were in kidney failure. The dog that attacked you did too much damage. Your brain can get that. Your heart doesn't speak that language. Your heart doesn't accept logic. The heart wants what the heart wants. And what your heart wants is that person, that furry, scaly, feathered person back. And you have to say it out loud because otherwise your heart won't listen. And I can tell you that speaking from personal experience. When I've had to make irreversible decisions on my own pets. I did the diagnostics. I saw the results. I knew the outcomes. And I still had to make irreversible decisions. So it happens to everybody. The other thing you can say when you talk out loud is you can deliver that eulogy. You can say that obituary. Cooper was the greatest dog that ever lived. He would wake me up every morning. He gave me a reason to get out of bed. He would tow me up the hill on that damn walk every single day, making sure I got exercise, but making sure I didn't wear myself out to get up that hill. And then he would sit at my feet when we went to Starbucks and be quiet and wait, because he knew the last bite of bagel was his. And he would watch me and use his every bit of power of canine telekinesis, trying to make that bagel jump down to him, even though he couldn't. But he knew that last bite was his. Doesn't matter what your obituary says. What matters is you put it out to the world. And you read it aloud. And you can read it aloud as many times as you need to. And you can share it with other people that loved him or her. And celebrate that life that way. Other options that you can do, if you're talented with the computer, you can make a video montage of your photos or your videos, and you can share it with people who loved them as well. You can have a memorial at your home. Or if you do have a local pet cemetery, see if you can do one at a local pet cemetery. Unfortunately, those are rare. And I can tell you in Southern California, the ones that do exist are in the category of prohibitively expensive for most people. If somebody says to you, well-meaning, you don't have memorials for pets, you can let them know that when police dogs die, they are draped in a flag and driven to the station where they lay in state for a day. So all the officers have the opportunity to make peace with that loss of a canine officer. So if it's good enough for a canine officer, you can absolutely do it, and nobody else gets a vote. What I do with my own pets when I am losing them is I talk to them about Rainbow Bridge. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Rainbow Bridge is the bridge that connects people heaven and dog heaven. Personally, I think they're not that separate, and the rainbow is just a nice little pathway that they named it. But I tell my dogs to look for me on the green stripe, because that's where I'm going to look for them. And I tell them not only wait for me on the green stripe or look for me on the green stripe, but anybody that you want to bring along can join our pack. If there was somebody who didn't have a family, or maybe there's just somebody who's having a tough time waiting, bring them on a play date, and we'll all be together on the green stripe. And we'll just all be together. The final thing I wanted to talk about is a question I get a lot from people is, when is it okay to love again? When is it okay to have another pet? Because they feel like loving again somehow discounts all the love and devotion that the pet that they lost gave them. It's like they're cheating. I can guarantee you, you are not cheating on your pet. That isn't a concept that even exists. Love knows no bounds. You are allowed, you are encouraged to love as much as you can. And people need pets in their lives for different reasons. Some people have to have a dog to feel safe. Some people have to have a dog because their house feels so small and so quiet, or a cat, or a ferret, or something scaly, fish, reptile, amphibian. They have to have a something, a someone. They cannot not have a someone to share their home with. And that's okay. That's 100% valid. When you lose someone you love, their physical presence exits your life. The love that you have for them, and I say have because the love doesn't die. The love that they have for you, that energy continues. And it takes a place in your heart. And it holds its place. It doesn't go anywhere. It's a seat at the table of your heart that will forever be filled by that love. And if someone new comes in your life, they just take a seat next to the other seat. Your table just gets bigger. And everybody's welcome at the table. And your heart will continue to grow and accommodate as much love as you can give. And if somebody gets a pet for you, even though you think you may not be ready, and ideally people shouldn't gift pets because that's a lifelong responsibility and a big deal. But if somebody does gift you a pet, recognize that that pet feels just as lost and just as lonely and just as confused as you do. Whether they come from a shelter or they're a puppy that was suddenly taken away from its mom and its siblings, or a kitten that was found out in the road and is trying to survive. Whatever pet it is, it needs love. And even if you aren't able to keep it lifelong, treat that pet and treat the person who's trying to do a kind thing with empathy, because their heart was in the right place. And things have a way of working out. That's why I have 13 dogs, 3 cats, a parrot, and a very understanding husband. I hope this helps.
Thank you so much. I just need to take a moment. There's so much to absorb in what you said. And we see and feel the tears and the grief that's being expressed tonight. And I'm so grateful that you've helped create this container for us to be in that's safe and that allows us to grieve openly. And we had someone talk to us a couple months ago about continuing bonds that is part of grief, that we continue to love and stay connected to and grow in relationship with our loved ones who have died. And there are traditions that affirm that throughout this world that we are part of. And that's, you've spoken very clearly to that tonight. And I'm so grateful. And one person here spoke a lot of wisdom in what they put in the chat, where they said, but our pets, their lives are much shorter than ours. And so we lose a lot more. They have we oftentimes, many of our pets die. We end up losing many of them. And I had a colleague in hospice who said, the bigger one's family is, the more we lose and the more grief we experience. And she said, the more love we get to have then. And family is not just biological, so much of it is our chosen family, those that we create and part of it. So I just want to affirm all of these feelings that people are having and know that they are so important to express, and also that love continues and helps us become more resilient and to find ways of continuing on in our love and our life. So thank you so much, Sarah, for doing that. Now, we have time, folks, for questions, and Dr. Hogan would prefer it if you would put it into the chat so that then we can lift them up to her. There was something a little bit earlier. Oh, someone gave voice to the fact that in many ways, I'm thankful we have a humane way to say goodbye to our suffering, furry, feathered, scaled family members. And I honestly wish we had more humane ways like this for humans who are trapped in human suffering as well. And it is something that many people have expressed, is that it can be this life that we live can reach points where survival is no longer enough. We stop living and we just survive.
Euthanasia really is a kindness that we are afforded in veterinary medicine. And it's a difficult choice to make. And I hear people say to me, how could, I could never do that. I would never murder my best friend. And they're coming from an emotional place, and I understand that. Or I have people talk to me about the guilt they feel because they made that decision. And what needs to be recognized is not only is euthanasia a kindness, it is an act of mercy. It is not done vengefully, ever. It is a huge responsibility that is an agreement that is pretty sacred between the veterinarian and the family. And sometimes that act of mercy is a byproduct of physical illness, but also I think that you can certainly have mental illness in animals. Obviously, it's a lot harder to diagnose, but one of the comments in the chat talks about a dog that was profoundly aggressive to the point that she couldn't keep other dogs safe. And that level of, aggression and predatory drive and unrelenting just aggression isn't normal, and it's a problem that a lot of people face. And the challenge becomes, if they rehome that pet, then they are potentially putting others at risk. And there is potential for violence to escalate. And it's, I don't believe that once they've tasted human blood, oh my God, they're a werewolf. No, I don't think that's accurate at all. But I think that unfortunately, if there's a strong aggression and a strong predatory drive, and then they act upon it and they're successful, that is its own reward. So it becomes like a feedback loop. positive reinforcement is going to escalate behavior. And so they're like, oh, well, I chased this thing and I caught it, and then I did this, and then it was squeaking and thrashing and did it. And that's the feedback loop. And I think that's what can build. And so I do think there's potential for violence to escalate. And I think that that's an incredibly difficult situation, but I think that's one where unfortunately you don't have a lot of choices because you can't put others in danger. And the other thing to keep in mind is dogs are social animals. Wolf packs are societies, and they absolutely understand that there is societal behavior norms that have to be followed. And if you do atypical behaviors that are against the pack and alpha outlines to you that this isn't allowed to continue, and the wolf that's subordinate to alpha, because we're alpha, continues to escalate, then alpha will take matters into their own hands. And that younger wolf could either be banished or eliminated from the pack another way. So recognize that that exists in canine society as well as human society.
Thank you. There's a question here that was first stated as a comment and then a question. What I said is a question, really. That is, I'm old enough that since I can't stand living without cats, will eventually die and leave at least one cat behind. So am I justified in getting another cat?
I think you're 100% justified in getting another cat, because recognize that you are going to have that cat, whomever you share your life with, and that cat is going to be the happiest, most loved, doted upon, adored kitty on the planet. And you need to just make plans with someone trusted that provide for that cat in the event of your physical, when you can't take care of him anymore. So you can either talk with your family members or a friend or potentially even a veterinary hospital. And you can talk with them and say, okay, you know what? I'm X years old. Human lifespan understandably is, this point. So what I would like to do is I would like to set up a fund with you so that if something happens to my cat in the future, there is already monies here to guarantee that there will be care provided. And you could potentially start doing that, or you could make a savings account that's designated for your pet's care, and just talk with someone you trust and say, when it's time, we'll know. And here's where we're going to go. And I've had clients historically say that I would like to designate you in my will as the recipient of my pet in the event that I pass away. And I think that's incredibly flattering. And I agreed to do that for some people.
Thank you. There was another question about helping our pets when other pets die. What are tips for helping them in that type of transition?
So what I will do, if it's a euthanasia situation, I encourage the family to bring in the other pets, because they do recognize the difference between a live companion and a deceased companion. And typically the other pet recognizes something is wrong, because I think the scent is certainly different. Like if they're in kidney failure and it's advanced, even I can smell that. And what I mean is, even me my nose compared to a dog or cat's nose is terrible. So if I can smell it, that they're recognizing the scent is off. I think the same thing with infection or something like that. They can recognize scents that are consistent with pathology. And what typically happens is we will send the one pet to heaven and the other pet will come over to them and sniff them. And I've seen this with dogs and cats and ferrets. And they may nose them a little bit, like, come on. And then all of a sudden they kind of back away. And then once they've done that acknowledgement, it's like they're invisible. And then they don't try to engage with them anymore in the room. And they will step around them or step over them, but they don't try to engage with them anymore. If you don't have the ability to bring your pet in to be present with the euthanasia, see if the veterinary hospital can take a towel or something and thoroughly rub your pet with it, and then take and put that towel in a Ziploc bag, and then bring that towel home and give it to the companion. And the scent will slowly fade over time, and they will understand, at least to an extent, that their friend's gone. I think it's hard when you've had two very connected animals and one suddenly disappears, because the other friend will search, go through the yard, go through the house, vocalizing, trying to locate them. And if you don't have the opportunity to either have them be present or do the towel thing, I think the best that you can do is probably try to give them some extra support, because you know that they're grieving too. And I 100% believe that animals grieve. Nobody can tell me otherwise. I've seen it too many times. And the other thing that I've seen too many times that I can't explain is I used to be the overnight doctor at the hospital for 12 years. And in emergency medicine, you're dealing with critical patients all the time. And you get a sense of experience where you can recognize that a patient isn't doing well, and you can get a pretty good idea of the timeline that you're looking at. And I would call the family and I would say, you know what? I am worried that we are losing this battle. I need you to come in. How long does it take you to get here? Tell me a good and realistic time. And they would say, we can be there in 20 minutes, or we can be there in however many minutes. And I would go over the pet and I would say, I just talked to your family. I need you to hang on for 20 minutes. I need you to stay with me for 20 minutes, but they will be here. And more often than not, they held on until that family got there and could say goodbye. If a family didn't get there, couldn't get there, again, I would call them on the phone and I would say, I'm going to put you on speakerphone, and I'm going to put that speakerphone by your pet, and we're all going to be stone silent. The last thing they hear is going to be your voice telling them whatever you need to tell them. And that helped a lot of people say a final goodbye and feel like they were still known and they were still a part of it, even though they couldn't physically be there. But I've seen too many pets hang on to see their family one last time for it to be coincidence.
Is there any education in veterinary school around grief for doctors to be?
So I can answer that as well as I can. Keep in mind, I'm old. So I graduated vet school in 2001. And when I graduated, there really wasn't much discussion around it. I think that given the tragically obvious increase in the suicides in the veterinary profession, the number one occupation likely to commit suicide is veterinarians, and female veterinarians are even overrepresented in that population. So I think given the level of suicides that were happening, they recognized that they need to be teaching some soft skills as opposed to the hard skills. You can learn the clinical medicine, but if you don't help people process the grief and the responsibility, then you it's going to weigh on people. So talking with younger doctors, they have said yes, that there is a degree, yes, there's a degree of training and talking about that now. But the other reality is as a veterinarian, you have to figure out how to get your arms around this, because even if you're a day practice, and I don't mean even like they're less than, I just mean you tend to see happier things. You get the well puppy exams and you get to do the first puppy, this is, oh, let's just give him his vaccine, or the family comes in and they're like, oh, something's wrong. And it's like, well, your cat's in heat. That's why she's howling at the door and rubbing against it that way. That's not something terrible. So, but you still have to perform euthanasias, and you still have to tell families hard news sometimes. And it's still a big responsibility. And you have to figure out a way to come to grips with that, because the reality is, if you're someone who has, you either have to develop faith or you have to find a way outside of yourself to be able to cope with that, because it's too heavy a burden to carry for one person. And I learned a long time ago in my practice, in my career practicing, that I euthanized dogs that were bona fide heroes, police dogs, dogs that had saved their family's life for different reasons. And when I did those euthanasias, they were fair and they were valid. But I made a commitment to myself that if I was going to take a soul if I was going to take a life that was lived with that level of sincerity and love and kindness and purity, I damn well better meet that standard. So I full on live my life like a Labrador. Everybody's my friend. I'm happy to see everybody. I love everyone. Yes, I will be a human blanket if you need it. And that was the first way that I kind of got my arms around it. And then the second way is, I'm a person of faith, and at some point I'm going to be judged by, whatever entity greater than myself exists. And there's going to be a whole lot of names on a scroll that I had a direct result in their heart stopping, because I had to. And I will be able to face whatever judgment and tell you every single one of those was an act of mercy. And if, my karma is strong enough, because I don't live with vengeance. I don't live with vitriol. And any act I did that way was an absolute act of kindness, where I had exhausted all possibilities, including and up to taking the responsibility for the life to live at my own home. I have 13 dogs for a reason. I didn't want to euthanize puppies sometimes, and I would tell the family, I can't put to sleep an 8-week-old puppy that I can fix for $100 worth of meds. Give him to me, and he will come be part of my pack. And thank God I have an incredibly wonderful husband who's like, okay, what's another pound to an elephant? Bring him home. So there's not a cheat code. There isn't an easy way to do it. You have to figure out your own, what works for you and what allows you to continue to do your job and love your job and not resent the feelings that are so hard. You have to figure out your own way to process it. So it is a lot like grief, because there's not a simple way. You can't bury it. You can't just set it aside. You can't let it accumulate, because like anything that you make a deposit, it grows with interest and then it's bigger than when you started. So my emotional vault is intentionally kept empty. I spend grief currency as it comes in. I will not let it accumulate.
You did such a good job tonight. Well, this whole year series is around ritual and remembrance. What we do collectively to remember, to honor, and to express our love for people and beings who have died, and what that means to continue those bonds. You've spoken to that in things that people can do through ritual to remember those pets who they love dearly. Have you seen communities, because you also alluded to the fact that some of the practices can be cost prohibitive for people? And have you seen practices where communities have found ways to memorialize, helping people memorialize their loved ones, their pets who have died?
Absolutely. A lot of shelters have like a memorial pathway, and you can buy a brick and have their name engraved. I know a lot of people who have planted a tree or something else in their yard to commemorate. If you go on Etsy, there's a lot of artists who will do magnificent pet portraits, and you can have them memorialized that way. There are also companies that will take a photo of your pet and make a stuffed animal that resembles your pet. So a three-dimensional stuffed animal that resembles your pet, and then you can put their collar on that on that stuffed animal. And by stuffed, I mean artificial. I don't mean taxidermied. Just for clarification.
Does anyone else have another question that they'd like to share with Dr. Hogan tonight? Julie or Jennifer, have you seen questions that I've missed?
I just saw that Sandy shared a YouTube clip and was gonna suggest that maybe we can send that along with either the survey or the recording, Jen, if that would be okay. Thanks, Sandy, for that.
Dr. Hogan, thank you so much for this time together tonight. We so appreciate
Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope I was at least a little bit helpful.
You were more than a little, and we're gonna just take a lot of time, I think all of us will, and absorb that over the next days. And unfortunately, we'll probably have lots and lots of questions 2 days from now, but it's great food for thought.
You have my email. If people have questions, I welcome the questions, and I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask everyone else to stay on, but Dr. Hogan will allow you to go and attend to the 13 dogs and everything else that's running around your house right now.
Thank you. I have appreciated you all so much, and I recognize what you do, and you are a source of sunshine. So I appreciate you deeply. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dr. Hogan.
Blessings. All right. Jennifer, what are we doing now? Oh, we're going to talk about next month. So we invite you all to come back and join us next month. It's going to be a week later in the month than we normally do this. So it's going to be on the 4th Thursday rather than the 3rd Thursday. And that's because our presenters could only do it that last week. And I am so thrilled that Miguel Flores and Nati Cano are going to be able to present and facilitate a conversation with us about their work in the Haven and the Native Ways program here in Tucson, Arizona, around helping folks who are navigating substance abuse and the grief that is experienced through that journey, and the use of tribal and Latino practices in that journey to support them. And so I encourage you all, if you haven't registered yet, to go on our website and register and plan on joining us next month. It is going to be very special and a unique opportunity, some things that often are not shared in the wider community. And then, okay, so one of the things that we talked about at the beginning of this year together and ritual and remembrance is that not only are we going to learn about rituals and forms of remembrance in these online sessions, but we're going to provide some opportunities to practice ritual and remembrance together. And so our first opportunity is going to be on May 10th. With El Nadoy, who is an amazing human being, a wonderful leader in this community, and he happens to also sit on our board of directors at Roots and Roads. But he is going to offer a session that's entitled Notes of Healing, the Transformative Role of Music in Grief and Memory. I encourage you, if you're in Sweden, you're welcome to fly in for it. But definitely folks who are here in this area, if you have the opportunity to come, you just go onto our Jennifer, the registration will open soon. She says at the bottom, so it'll be up soon. There's only limited space because of the venue, and it's a nominal $15 fee. But if you really want to go and that's going to be prohibitive for you, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to help you. Okay. And then on the third Thursday in May, we have our next online session called that's going to be the Honor Flight of Southern Arizona. We will have members of the board of directors with Honor Flight Southern Arizona. And this is a nonprofit organization that facilitates flights for veterans to Washington, D.C. to honor them at the memorials there, to thank them for their service, and to have a time of remembering not only their time together, but the people maybe who have died that they served with, and their journey throughout life after their service. So please plan on joining us on May 15th. And if we are always looking for sponsors to this series, if you're part of an organization, if you know of an organization that would be interested in making this series available free of charge to the community, please reach out to them or connect us. I'd be happy to talk with a representative from that organization to see if they might be interested in helping us support this series.
Okay. And then you all will be getting an email shortly after we end, about 7:30. It should hit your inbox. Please look for that email so that you can provide feedback on tonight's presentation. It's a quick little survey, but the feedback that we get is so invaluable. So we really would appreciate if you take the time to fill that out. And as an added bonus, for the first 3 people to complete the survey tonight, you'll win 2 tickets to Tohono Chul, which is fabulous. I love Tohono Chul. So please keep a lookout for that email. Like I said, about 7:30, it should hit your inbox. And I think since we had some time, we were going to go ahead and just allow folks to share if they'd like to, if during our remaining time, if you all want to speak to your loss or remember your pet, I'll go ahead and give folks permission to unmute and we can do that.
Or any, I mean, we, always try to catch in the chat and lift up things, but if there was something maybe that didn't feel like it got answered for you, we just invite really any reflections, any questions, any comments you'd like to share, and you can unmute yourselves and just speak freely. Oh, maybe raising hands is good, Bonnie.
I just wanted to ask if anybody was sponsoring the honor flight session.
Casa de la Luz Hospice will be sponsoring that.
Mia?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, the last cat I had who died before Jade, I was able to actually bury him, and I don't intellectually understand it, but it made a big difference in the grief, being able to, it was like I skipped over the worst of it. I'm sorry I either couldn't or did. I maybe could have, but I didn't do that with Jade, who died about a week ago. I I took the easy way out and had her cremated.
Feel like there's no easy way out.
I agree.
Joy?
I just wanted to say thank you because this helped me so much. I'm the one that had the dog with the aggression problem, and putting down a dog that was just the most loving dog, and being so young and otherwise completely healthy was the worst experience of pet loss that I've had in my entire life, and I've lost 18 dogs over 40 years. So I'm just really grateful to have been part of this. It helped me a great deal. I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank
you for
you.
being here.
Thank you for sharing that. And same, Mia, for sharing everybody who, I mean, we try to, this is a family, right? And so being able to talk about things that maybe other people don't understand or that you don't feel comfortable. So thank you for trusting us and using this time to help move through, we don't get over it, but we can move through it in different ways. So thank you.
May I share a painting that Brittany Wagner did for me after my 20-year-old Jack Russell left the planet?
Yeah, please. Wow.
Oh, beautiful. What was his name, Bonnie?
His name was Riley, and my dog Chica, I had this picture on the table here, and my dog Chica, I caught her with her paws on the table staring at the picture.
Gosh.
If that doesn't tell you something.
Yeah. Yes. So much. Well, thank you all so much for being with us. And I know, we try to do a lot of different topics. Once a year, we try to include, animal loss. Again, recognizing that they are beings that play such an important role in our life. But we invite you to any of our sessions are normally on the third Thursday of every month. And if you can't make it, to the Zoom, we normally, unless a speaker has a specific request not to record, we record them all and have them on our website. But we invite you to stay connected and join us again in the future. Jennifer, David, any last thoughts before we say goodnight?
Just
No, I'll
thank you all.
just share too that we now have a YouTube channel that we have our education sessions, which can sometimes be a little easier to share if you have folks who you think would benefit from seeing one of our sessions. You can look for it there too.
Wow, we're on YouTube now.
Yeah, we're almost famous. Hey. Well, thanks, everybody. It was wonderful to see you, to read your comments. Thank you for putting all the names in. And actually, I sent Jen a message while we were talking about sending out, listing all the names of everybody's animals when we send out that follow-up email with the links and the other YouTube that was shared. So we will keep your beloved pets in our hearts as well. We hope you have a beautiful night. Thank you. Thank you. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.